Did you know that there was an attempted genocide in 1915? No, not the one everyone thinks of. This is the story of the forgotten genocide, the Armenian tragedy of 1915. The Ottoman Empire ruled over most of the Middle East and Eastern Europe for hundreds of years. They controlled lands from North Africa all the way to the edges of modern Turkey. By the late 1800s, Western powers started taking over the Ottoman territories. By 1914, the empire was just a shadow of its former self. World War I was raging on and the Ottomans sided with Germany. Soon, the Russian army began pushing into Ottoman territory. Many ethnic minorities lived within the empire, including the Armenians. They had their own language and culture, but were still second-class citizens to the ruling Turks. The Ottomans viewed them as a potential threat and started arresting Armenian intellectuals and leaders. This caused outrage among the general populace. When the Russians got close, it seemed like the end was near for the Ottomans. So the government decided to take desperate measures. On April 24th, 1915, Ottoman soldiers began rounding up Armenian men, women, and children in the city of Constantinople. They were told that they were being relocated for their own safety. In reality, they were being marched into the deserts of Syria, where no one could find them. Over the next 4 years, 1.5 million Armenians were killed by the Ottoman army. It's hard to believe, but this was actually the second genocide of the 20th century. The first was the Herero genocide in German Southwest Africa, present-day Namibia. That's why you probably haven't heard of it. The perpetrators of the Armenian Genocide were the same ones who orchestrated the Holocaust just a few years later. They perfected the art of genocide. They used the same tactics on the Armenians that they would later use on the Jews, except this time no one really cared. At the time, most of the world was focused on the war in Europe and didn't pay much attention to what was happening in the Middle East. Only 2 countries called out the Ottomans, Russia and the United States, but even then, they didn't do much to stop it. After the war, the Ottoman Empire was completely defeated. Their army was disarmed and their state was dissolved. Modern Turkey was established in its place. The new government quickly set about covering up the genocide. They destroyed evidence, arrested survivors, and made it illegal to even talk about what happened. For decades, the only way to learn about it was through secret memoirs and hidden documents. But why don't we call it a genocide? A genocidas is the deliberate killing of a group of people based on ethnicity or religion. The word was coined after the Holocaust to describe what happened to the Jews, but the Armenian killings meet the definition. It was systematic, intentional, and based on ethnicity. So why don't we call it a genocide? Some countries, especially those in the Middle East, are very sensitive about the term genocide. They view it as a political tool that can be used to control or manipulate people. They are afraid that if they call the Ottoman actions a genocide, it could lead to instability or violence. And it's not just the governments that are to blame. Many historians have also been reluctant to call it a genocide. In 1981, an American historian, George Bornosian, estimated that around 1.5 million Armenians were killed. He also stated that the Turkish government bears the responsibility for this genocide. Despite this, he never used the word genocide. Instead, he referred to it as a mass killing or a massacre. Even today, less than a dozen countries officially recognize the Armenian Genocide. Most of them are in Europe and the Americas, But why should we care? What does it matter if we call it a genocide or not? It doesn't bring back the dead or undo the suffering. Well, it turns out that the effects of the genocide are still being felt today. Modern Turkey is still trying to come to terms with its past. Many deny that the genocide ever happened. Others argue that it wasn't as bad as the Holocaust. This denial has made it difficult for the two countries to improve relations. Armenia and Turkey don't even have diplomatic relations. They view each other with suspicion and hostility. Calling the genocide a genocide wouldn't solve all of these problems. It wouldn't bring the countries together or erase the pain of the past. But it would be a step in the right direction. It would be a way of acknowledging the suffering of millions and making sure it never happens again. Thank you for watching. I hope you learned something new. See you next time.